Many of you, if you've been following me for a while, I've been talking about how some of the police departments in the country have been, deeply impacted by COVID-19. Detroit is no exception. In fact, they have been hit very hard. They have about at their ninth precinct, 2,800 officers and employees, and over 1,000 have already been in quarantine. So it is going through there like crazy. This is the New York Times, April 20th, 2020. Coronavirus devastates Detroit police from the chief on down. So, the chief of police, I haven't heard anything about him being sick, but I know, he was talking about how shorthanded they were at his precinct. And, they had to use police officers from other jurisdictions to come over and help them out because so many were out sick. So, in the beginning of this article, they talk about this police and pancake breakfast. So I'm just skipping over that part. And those people that attended this police and pancake breakfast, and I think it was on the 6th of March, 25 had to be quarantined after that event. So the coronavirus has been a devastating path through the Detroit Police Department, making it one of the hardest hit law enforcement agencies in the country. The head of the homicide department died, so did a 911 operator and volunteer police chaplain. As recently as Thursday, 9 people from the department remained hospitalized, fighting to survive. The pancake breakfast was likely one of many points of infection. Out of 2,800 uniformed officers and civilians who work for the department, at least 180 tested positive for the virus by late last week, with more than 1,000 quarantined at some point. Officers were going out left and right, said a veteran of more than 20 years experience who asked that his name be withheld because he was not authorized to speak to reporters. There were a few days that became overwhelming as the department succumbed to the virus. So did many other police officers in different locations in Michigan. With widespread poverty and largely African American population, they had elevated rates of COVID-19 along with diabetes and hypertension. Detroit has been one of the worst hit places in the country, with a city population of 672,000, has had at least 7,605 known coronavirus cases and 605 deaths. Chief James Craig, a Detroit native, tested positive on March 27th and stayed isolated at home until Thursday. The chief, who spent 28 years with the Los Angeles police before taking the top job at the department where he started as a patrol officer, said that nothing in his long career, not mass shootings, not earthquakes, not riots that followed the Rodney King beating, had prepared him for this pandemic. This unknown enemy that we fight is real, he said at his first news conference after leaving his sickbed. None of us have had to deal with anything like this. Yeah, you can't arrest it, you can't shoot it, you can't charge it, you can't take it to court. That's it. And he's not the only chief. Another chief of police, y'all, announced they were positive. It's the Miami chief of police down there in Florida. There's an article that came out about him being positive for coronavirus. Officers patrolling the streets and investigating crimes said virus had ratcheted up stress and disrupt all standard rhythms of police work. Instead of roll call, officers get temperature checks and an envelope with the day's order. They give arrested people masks and wipe down patrol cars after every encounter. I have to come into work concerned about whether I'm going to be the next victim or not, said Officer Mark Perez, fresh out of the police academy after a patrol shift through Northwest Detroit. There's only so much an officer can do to prevent himself from coming in contact with the actual virus. Every day is stressful for me. Detectives who are used to sitting across the table from suspects are now doing interviews on the phone, unable to read clues like body language, mannerisms, and facial expressions, said Lieutenant Rebecca McKay, an investigator with the Major Crime Unit. Even in person interviews at the jail now have to be distant behind glass. It's hard to build a rapport or any kind of relationship with the offender, she said, when you have a glass between you and you have to yell back and forth to get a statement. At the best times of Detroit wrestles with its crime rate. You shouldn't be wrestling with no crime rate at this time when everybody's in lockdown. The city and its police force have improved markedly since Detroit declared bankruptcy in 2013. At the time, the police took so long to respond to 911 calls that some people didn't bother phoning. Mm-mm-mm. The pandemic has complicated things. Crime on an upward trajectory this year appeared to stall initially in March as more people stayed home. But it escalated in the first week of April with 8 homicides and 27 non fatal shootings. Wow. Oh, wow. Most of the homicides were drug related, but officers said there were also intervening in more domestic disputes. Yeah, because they said domestic violence is going through the roof in the country. Dial-a-dope delivery service for marijuana were in high demand, Chief Craig said, with buyers and sellers trying to rob each other. Damn. We are trying to balance the spike in violent crimes while knowing we have to reduce manpower. It's hard, said Everett Griffey, a member of the Detroit Board of Police Commissioner, a civilian oversight panel. For the force to cope with the virus swept through the city, the chief modified the rule book in late March to reduce encounters between officers and the public. Smaller misdemeanors like running a red light could be let go, he said. Enforcing them wasn't worth the health risk for both the officers and the perpetrators. That didn't mean officers were turning a blind eye to crime, Lieutenant McKay said. They just made more judgment calls. We've been told to use caution and discretion wherever possible with regards to low end crimes, she said, basically, for our own safety. The new policy, combined with fewer officers on the street and a stay at home order issued by Michigan's governor on March 24th, resulted in a markdown in arrests. From March 24th through April 14th, the police made approximately 736. According to official figures, less than half of the 1,518 arrests in the same time period last year. But they have had to ramp up responses to medical calls and take steps to enforce the stay at home order, which was reinforced on April 2nd with a $1,000 fine for violators. On April 8th, to take just one day, The police answered 952 complaints about inappropriate gatherings and issued 56 citations. Deputy Chief James White said at a recent news conference, Officer Nelson Hammonds, who was 3 years on the force, had tensions between police officers and the community seemed to have eased somewhat. Normally, you see people whenever they're having a really bad day, he said. Now people want to ask questions all the time. People are concerned and they look to us for answers. Still, suspicion die hard. On his recent shift, Officer Perez, the recent Academy graduate, extended a box of masks towards a man walking into a liquor store, offering him one. Hell no, the man said, jolting backwards. It took him a moment to realize that the officer wasn't hassling him. I thought you were going to arrest me, he said, and the two men laughed. Throughout the past few weeks, as more officers were infected or exposed and pulled from duty, the workload seemed to double overnight, officer said, and a sense of dread swept through the department. When it first jumped off, there was nothing but fear, said the 20-year veteran, adding that everyone especially worried about taking the virus home. Chief Craig said that when he first got sick, he thought it was a seasonal allergy, but soon fever, chills, and a loss of appetite, and he became lethargic, knocked him down out of commission for a few days. Just talking on the phone was a bit of a challenge, he said. An avid weightlifter, he tried to keep up throughout his quarantine with doctor orders and family taking a dim view of his efforts. He said he can still only press half as many of weights on his home lifting machine as he could previously. Well, I don't know why you would want to lift weights when you got coronavirus. I don't know. I don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, Detroit, like many other departments in the country, they're all struggling. And this is just the beginning, just like there's going to be a second wave. It's going to be a second wave to hit these police departments too. But y'all, please tell me what you think. The way I see it, this is definitely a dose of karma, isn't it? The way they have treated us all throughout this country and still continue to do was a disgrace. Now, because many places are still on lockdown, they can't hassle us as much as they used to. But now they're all falling to COVID-19. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.